Pelosi versus MNUCHIN. It was a day in which, I got heated more than I usually get heated. But we needed it. We needed to blow off some smoke. We needed to make it very clear what she's saying and what she's not saying. But ultimately, our focus is renewed. Our focus is very renewed because MNUCHIN's offer is very good. And more people are coming out in favor of MNUCHIN's offer. The focus is there. The negotiations are continuing. They did negotiate today. They're not stopping negotiations. And ultimately, we continue to win because she wanted to leave and go home several weeks ago. Just campaigned to get herself reelected. But the progress is there. We just need to get to the finish line. And we're almost there. This is Pelosi versus MNUCHIN. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Pelosi versus MNUCHIN, a special report about where the negotiations are between the two faces of the negotiating table. Big progress today as the two parties continue to negotiate. They have not stopped. And new progress as millions of Americans now understand that MNUCHIN's deal offer is very good. It's very, very good. In this video, I'll be going over your comments and how the reaction to Pelosi's remarks on Wolf Blitzer last night on CNN really amplified the situation. Second, I'll be going over the history of attempts to really get this done and why this has been really a good progress in the last 6 days. Third, I'll go over the element of now to December, which is an important thing you need to understand, and why time is on your hand now, but may not be in a few weeks. All right, let me get to the breaking news. The breaking news is that Steve MNUCHIN and Nancy Pelosi are still negotiating. Now, Steve MNUCHIN did appear before the Malkin Foundation today and said that he is concerned that he does not think a stimulus bill could be passed by act of law between now and the election, but he is to continue to negotiate. At this point, getting something done before the election and executing on it will be difficult. We continue to make progress on certain issues. On certain issues, we continue to be far apart. I will say from my standpoint, the all or nothing approach doesn't make sense. That's basically a very good point. What's important to understand is it's as though, not to tap ourselves on the back, but it's as though the purple power has now overcome this entire country. Because what you saw last night with Wolf Blitzer was basically a news reporter on CNN that tends to sometimes be more democratic, telling Nancy Pelosi that he understands, the news reporter, the entire history of the negotiations, the problem solvers, the blue dogs, Andrew Yang's comments, and that her narrative was not going to work because it was inaccurate. And that's one of the most important testaments to purple power. And it's finally working. What's working this week is not just that Steve MNUCHIN's numbers are so great. It's not just that he's told us his numbers. It's that we now realize where the numbers are and where they land, and that we have that information. Americans aren't stupid. Americans know what they need. And with Steve MNUCHIN, we have a $1,200 stimulus check offer, which is very good. In fact, it's very generous, as the president suggested one time, and it's more generous than what the Democrats have proposed. The Democrats currently are at $500 if you're a veteran on someone else's tax return. That doesn't work. You know why that doesn't work? Because you serve this country, and the fact that you are dependent on someone else's tax return, whereas your buddy down the street isn't, and will get a full stimulus check, makes no sense. What also makes no sense is under the first stimulus package, you didn't even get a stimulus check because there was no stimulus checks for people on SSDI, SSI, Social Security, or railroad benefits if you were an adult dependent. Well, the great news is that Steve MNUCHIN has great deal offers. The great news is Steve MNUCHIN's giving you bigger checks. The great news is Steve MNUCHIN's giving you bigger FPUC. The great news is that Steve MNUCHIN has state and local where it's supposed to be. The great news is that Steve MNUCHIN says he's open to multiple stimulus checks. So why would we not agree to this $1.8 trillion bill? Yes, there are some provisions that need fixing. Yes, it's not retroactive to the date we want. But you can't have it all the way or no way. That's not how life works. You don't just sit back and expect absolute perfect scenario every single time. And so if a bill is 80% there or 90% there, then do it. Because as we sit here in October, what are we going to do? Wait till we have a perfect bill? The history of the attempts from Steve Mnuchin have not been detailed on this channel in recent days, so I want to go over it right now. Steve Mnuchin offered $400 a week of FPUC in July. It's been 10 weeks since that offer, so you would have had $4,000 in your pocket, but the Temple of Doom rejected it. He offered $1,200 stimulus checks. Now, understand, his stimulus checks for dependents was cheaper then, and his stimulus check for children was cheaper then as well. He's at $1,000 for children now, higher than the Temple of Doom, and he's at $1,200 for adult dependents, higher than the Temple of Doom. He was not there in July. It's not quite clear why he raised that, and that she went down the other direction, but you would have had that check as well since July. Next, he offered EIDL grant and loan. You would have had that since July as well. He also has a hazard pay CDC grant that could come to you. He offered that in July as well. She rejected it as well. Then he offered mortgage forbearance, student debt repayment for forbearance, rental aid assistance. He offered all these things. All these things would have been yours, but she said, no, I need to have everything perfect. And ultimately, everything perfect cost you thousands of dollars, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. The important thing to understand is that now to December is a really clear timeline, and you need to understand how time is working in your favor. But it's not working in your favor in a couple of weeks. Steve Mnuchin said, at this point, it's getting something done before the election and execute on it will be difficult. Okay, well then what is the alternative? We wait for the election to happen. What happens if Trump loses? Will Steve Mnuchin continue to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi? What is your opinion? Drop in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. I don't think he will. I don't think he will. Will the president do a stimulus package if he loses the election? There's two different versions of losing the election. There's one version where the president loses the election, accepts the results. The other version of losing the election is he loses the election and it's in court for 6 months, which a lot of people think is a possibility. Under the second scenario, where it's in court for 6 months, you may get a stimulus package. But under the first scenario, if he loses the election and he accepts the results, will you get a stimulus package between October and January of next year? I don't think so. I don't see it happening. Now, this things change by the second and things get really screwy, but I don't see that happening. So then when would you see a stimulus package? After Trump leaves the White House? No. You may not see it until March, because it takes a certain number of weeks for senators and congressional leaders to be sworn in, the new ones that win. Then they got to write a bill. Then they got to vote on the bill. Then they got to send it to the new president. Then he has to approve it or veto it. Then they have to set up the agency that sends out the money. Then they have to send out the money, and then you have to wait for the money. That is not January. It may not even be March. And so that is why time is of the essence. You need to get it done now. You can't wait for Mnuchin and Pelosi to say, you know what, we'll start negotiating after Election Day. Really? Here's a reality check. Here's a history lesson. How many times have these people said they're going to get to something and they never get to it? Let me go over how many times these people have promised you they're going to get to something in a few weeks and never get to it. First, CARES Act 1. Multiple stimulus checks. You were supposed to get multiple stimulus checks. They took it out. They said, you know what? The stimulus check for April and May and June, we'll get to it when we come back in session in July. Okay, they came back in session. They didn't get to it. No, they didn't mention it. It's act like it never happened. FPUC 1.0. They set it to expire. They wrote the bill to have it expire while they're on vacation. Isn't that such a novel idea? It's just totally brilliant, I say sarcastically. Well, guess what? They're on a vacation and expired. Did you think maybe they tried not to have it expire before they went on vacation? No. You think when they came back from vacation, there was a sense of urgency to get passed? Oh, to get get extension? Oh, no. As soon as it expired and they came back from vacation, we're at the current situation, which was Nancy Pelosi had a humongous, overinflated, a bloated $3.4 trillion bill that had unemployment benefits in there. It should not even be in there. You knew it was going to expire. You should not have allowed it to expire. You should have had it protected so it did not expire. Okay, but now you're throwing into a massive bill that has all this other junk. We're never going to get to the unemployment benefits. How about hazard pay? No. Put it in there. Well, Mitt Romney had a hazard pay bill. Put it in there, everything, and we'll get to it. No. How about Maxine Waters' rental aid program or Kamala Harris's great rental aid program, eviction moratorium? They had standalone bills. These are all separate standalone bills. Did you put them in there? No. We're not going to put them in our standalone. We're not going to have standalone bills. We'll throw everything together. Airlines, travel. Every time that there was an opportunity to get something done, there was an opportunity to not get it done. Let me answer some incredible questions from yesterday. Vicky, Nancy's most hated woman in America. Evelyn, Mitch is crazy. Charlotte, Trump only one not politician. The rest of them are bat crazy. Troy, we the people order President Donald Trump to sign executive order. Remember, you work for us. Russell, this is why mediators and arbitrators are used in the real world. Joe Rogers, this has come to the point. Discuss. Carlita, we need term limits. Shalila, Mitch McConnell, 78 years old, and Nancy Pelosi is not young either. Matt G, get them in a cage. Okay, I'm not going to say that on camera, but you get a sense of where that view is going. I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of things happening. But what I want you to understand is that we remain focused. Executive orders is clearly the fastest path. Executive orders would get you your stimulus checks, 10 days after they're signed into law. Executive orders for FPUC would get you your enhanced unemployment benefits, within 2 months, generally, by states. So why are we waiting around for a very bad path to potentially get money in March of next year? I mean, just sort of insane. And that's why I try to empower you with the information so you understand where you get from point A to point B. And that people that distract you with, we'll get to it after the election, may ultimately be setting you up for something you really don't want. Coming up next is Evenings LALATE, but before that, go to the front channel, subscribe. Subscribe because I'm trying to make things very simple for you in a complex environment in which people are trying to throw, strange darts at you every 10 seconds. Also like this video. Meantime, coming up on Evenings LALATE, a lot of twists and turns. 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, a 1-hour broadcast starting with Check and then Purple Power. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay LALATE.